Hey, welcome back. Um, Today I wanted. So I think I started reading. I started listening to the Federalist Papers. I've explained that before. I did kind of want to do that. Um, I guess I did get the idea from Hamilton. I thought they posed those papers in an interesting way. I never really. I guess if you had quizzed me about it, I might have been able to give you like an answer about like, oh yeah, it's about Alexander Hamilton wrote papers about the Constitution. But when I thought about it, like the way they say it in Hamilton is like he's defending the Constitution, the idea that there were people who opposed it and he really needed to be ratified. That was interesting to me. Like, oh, I never really. I guess I always did think, oh, it's the Constitution, and people always thought it was a good idea, and but okay. So what are the Federalist Papers? Three people wrote them from 1778 to 1779. 80 essays about why the Constitution should be ratified and why the current Articles of Confederation are not good enough. Because the Articles of Confederation were the first, like, ruling document. I don't know what you would call it. Governing document that, like, created the rules for the country and stuff. And I guess they had a constitutional congress in 1778, maybe it was the beginning of the year, and then Alexander Hamilton was like, I really need to ratify this thing, so I'm going to try to convince everybody. Because all the states have to ratify it, I think. So they're labeled like Federalist number 1, Federalist number 2, and those are I've only read the first 3 so far. There's 85, I think. But they're interesting so far, and I think I can read all of them. I guess I was afraid that I wouldn't understand it. And of course I'm not going to understand everything. It was written 300 years ago by people who are much smarter than me, so... but I am getting something out of it. So the first one was written by Alexander Hamilton. It's just kind of like he lays out what the rest of the essays are going to be about. I think it's like 6 bullet points. The first one is just why there needs to be a union instead of a confederation, which is just an like all the states will basically have their own constitution and they'll be run their own way. We'll be connected. We'll still be United States, but we won't really have a federal government. I mean, we might have one, but it won't have much power. I think they use the example of like Great Britain and maybe Ireland. No, I'm not getting that right. But it's kind of similar to that. Just like I don't remember exactly how Great Britain, and especially 300 years ago, but I know like Wales and Ireland are part of Great Britain. Or maybe just Northern Ireland. I forget about that all the time. But Ireland is still its own thing. It has its own government. But it's kind of a loose... Well, I guess it's kind of like the European Union. So like Germany and Italy are part of the European Union. But they're all like allies and stuff, but they have like their own governments and their own armies and their own I was going to say currency, but it's not right. They're separate. So the first section of the Federalist Papers is... Is there a bad guy here? Nope, there's one down there. Hey. Why should the United States have a strong federal government and not just be a collection of confederations and states and colonies and stuff? I like the way Alexander Hamilton writes too, because he was saying the first he was being very diplomatic, which is something you don't see very much in politics anymore. But he was saying stuff like, "Well, this is just my opinion, and the worst thing I can do is to seem disingenuous or dishonest to you, because I want you to agree with my position, and I don't want any notion of the fact that I don't know. The way he says it is very smart, but so it's hard to paraphrase what he said, but he's just like, I think the Constitution is the best way, is the best document we can create to run the country, and I think because it creates a strong federal government. And in this paper, I will explain my positions on why I think that's the case and why you should adopt it. And that's why I'm doing this. I don't want to be dishonest at all. That's just it. That's why I'm doing it. You're going to hear a lot of people arguing back and forth. He said something really interesting, which was I don't know. He knew that there would be political parties, even though at the time I don't think there were in America. And he's like, people are going to present their arguments as if they're the absolute truth, and anybody who is opposing them is evil and propping themselves up as demagogues. He even used that word, which is something people use a lot today. He's like, I don't want to do that. I don't want you to think I'm a demagogue or I'm just a guy who's just writing why he thinks the federal government should be stronger and why it's important for the continuation of this country as it is and as we want it to be. That's it. If you disagree, you can write your anti-federalist papers, which actually exist. I forget who wrote that. I think it was Patrick Henry. But they obviously didn't work. People who didn't like the Constitution and wanted the states to be stronger. I really liked the way he presented the paper, because people don't do that anymore. They're just they do exactly what he said. He's like, our position is the moral superior position to every other position, and if you disagree, you're basically Hitler. Imagine someone just being like, listen, this is what I believe, and these are my arguments to support it, and if you don't, then I don't know. I mean, I think the country's not going to continue, but what are you going to do? I can't force you to believe what you can't believe. You don't want to. So this is it. This is the paper. If you don't believe by the end of these papers that the Constitution should be the law of the country, then I did a bad job. It's my fault. You're not a bad person. You're not Hitler for not agreeing with me. It just means I didn't make my point good enough. Is he talking to somebody? Oh God.
Let them keep picking us off. Come on.
I got him in the throat. Evidence of truth. He did get a little bit high flown with talking a little bit about like the evidence of truth. I don't know. Like there is some kind of higher truth that we can all be aware of, and he was trying to like get to it or something. I don't know.
Fucker.
But we can skip over that. Because I don't know if I fully understood what he was trying to say. Let's get my bow and arrow. The man is non-stop. The current Confederacy would not contain the Union, and the Union is important. Whatever. Split into confederacies. Okay, so that was just the first paper. Federalist number 2 and 3 were written by John Jay. I don't actually know who that is. Just some dude. Probably a congressman. And he only wrote like 6 of them. And Hamilton wrote like 50 or something. Let's get this guy. Can I get through here? Oh, I could shoot the bars. Somebody saw that. Oh. So John Jay starts off the second Federalist paper with an argument that I didn't really like. Maybe I didn't understand it, but it seemed like he was arguing that, well, the reason why we need a union is because he did mention like, oh, the providence of God, and there was this high. It seems like there's this higher providence or this higher power keeping us together, and we've bonded over the war, so we should stay together. That's kind of a dumb argument, but in the third one he makes a better argument. I didn't really like that. I don't know, I was thinking like, oh, we came here for Hamilton, not John Jay, right? John Jay's kind of an idiot. He's like, oh, well, we should have Hamilton introduces this like amazing concept in like this amazing way, and he talks, and he's very smart, and then he's like, all right, John Jay, take it over. And John Jay's like, we should have a union because God told us to do it. Okay, thanks, John Jay. I'll take it back. But he didn't really. The third Federalist number 3 is better. He makes a better argument. So national security. Okay, yeah, I think the third one was about like national security. He was saying. And I like the points he was making, and I agreed with them. He was saying more countries, more wars, more treaties, more constitutions, also to observe other nations' rules, one state acting more freely, Indian, Spanish, English borders, national government can be more temperamental and cool. Okay. So he was saying if we do live as a confederacy, each specific state is more likely to act out against, like, I don't know, Indians, because back then, I mean, I don't know, they had a lot of people on their borders. They had the Spanish and the English and the Indians and the French, and if someone attacked them, it would be more likely that they would just act on their own and just be like, okay, we gotta fight them back. And then that would weaken the whole Confederacy if we're just constantly having our own wars and they would ask for support from the other confederacies, but sometimes they might not give it because they're like, well, you fought the Indians, why'd you do that? We're not going to help you. They would start out as allies, obviously, because they fought together and they defeated the British together, but they might end up with like factions of, and well, maybe one of the states might even join the French. I don't know. They're like, well, these French guys, they've got a lot of good stuff, and they're saying like, hey, if you ally with us against the other colonies, we'll give you some French baguettes and stuff. I think I got him. The man is non-stop. So he was saying if we're all connected by a federal government and the federal government has to approve wars and stuff, then each specific state is going to be less likely to act out because they would need approval from the federal government before they did anything. And what was the thing he said? To observe other nations' rules, one state. He made a good argument, and the main point of it was just that if states are separate, they'll just act a little bit more impetuously. Is that the right word? Is it? I gotta look that up. I didn't do a word of the day today, so that'll be my word. Impetuous. Done quickly without thought. Yeah, that's what I meant. Okay. They'll act impetuously. A national government can be more cool and temperamental because they have to think about the ramifications of how this is going to affect everybody in the country, and should we... The one thing that he brought up that I liked, he said, there's proof of this when you look at monarchies, because monarchies are constantly going to war off emotions. A king is doing it for his reputation, or his family was dishonored by somebody who I don't know, attacked them, and he's like, oh, I have to think about my legacy. And so monarchs go to war, even though the wars don't really affect them. They get to sit in their castle, and who cares? That's interesting. It made sense when he said it, but when I say it, it sounds like, well, isn't a federal government closer to a monarchy than a confederacy? I guess when you think about the federal government, you think more about Congress than the executive branch. And so in the Constitution, it says Congress goes to war. So you have to get 100 senators and 400 congressmen to agree that war is the right thing. So it's like, it's not just one person who's saying, oh, someone dishonored me, so I have to send all my people to war. So he's saying, if our goal is to be a more peaceful world, that's got to be the last person, then it's better to have these kinds of governments than monarchies and confederacies and factional things. I agreed with him. I thought it was a good argument, especially for the young United States, because if you think about it, like, I mean, what if there was a confederacy and South Carolina was its own country almost? I mean, how many people were living in South Carolina? Like 500,000? What if South Carolina had to go to war and they had to get their own army together? They'd have like 3,000 people to fight. It makes sense, especially when the country was younger and smaller, that, like, we do have to stay together, and we need a strong federal government we have to be a little bit more forceful in this world because we're young, and if we split up, it's gonna be bad. We're gonna just be separated and we're gonna fall apart. We need a strong union. And I was thinking about that in relation to today, because if Alexander Hamilton was around today, would he still agree with himself? Because a lot of things have changed. The country's huge. We're a superpower. We're the biggest superpower that has ever existed in the history of the world. We have the biggest GDP. We have the biggest army.
Right. Boat.
Would it be... Is the federal government too strong? Would it be beneficial to have... even just separate into 4 or 5 pieces? Like, okay, you have the southern faction and the western faction and the northeast faction, which have their own major governments, and we're all kind of loosely tied together through articles of confederation. And we have our own federal governments by region, but not by the nation. So we are kind of like a European Union of the United States. It's like we have our own states. Like Germany has its own provinces, probably. I don't know. But we're connected to the... Where's the boat? Oh. Okay, I'll get on the boat tomorrow, I think. It is interesting to talk about this, because when I was reading it, it made more sense. But then when I was talking about it, I was like, John Jay, what were you talking about? In Hamilton times, they needed to stay together because there was like 60 people in the country. I don't know, I wish we did this kind of thing more, where people were just like... I mean, imagine a politician writing a thing that they were really convicted about. Just writing like an 80 essay long paper about healthcare and just saying, this is my plan and this is my appeal to the people, and not just making a speech about it, like a dumb 20-minute speech. Oh, we need healthcare because our nation is so great and we need our specific healthcare plan. And like, no, get into like the specifics. Like, the people want to know that stuff. I know they release their plans, but they don't really release their arguments why they think it's good. They're just, I don't know, they release like, okay, well, I know I don't look at they do release their plans, and I don't really look at them, and I should. And people do vet them, like professional economists and stuff. I know they always look at those and they're like, oh, this is what we think is going to happen with this plan. But I just wish somebody could be as convicted as Hamilton was. Like, this is why I really believe in this. We never really get that. I don't feel like it. You get like the religious, or like the political platitudes and stuff. Anything else? I don't think I'll talk about the Federalist Papers tomorrow. I went through most of my notes. A union is more restrained and so more peaceful. I like that idea. Yeah, union of like in a Congress that's everybody, that represents everybody equally. If Virginia wanted to go to war with Spain, they would need to get approval from the Congress. And New York would say, well, I don't want to go to war with Spain. I'm doing fine here. I mean, you got to convince me. If you really want to go to war with Spain, you got to convince us that it's in the benefit of the country and not just whatever weird thing you want to do. Because they attacked one of your towns, okay. So, we'll help you take the town back, I guess, but... Do we really want to go to war with Spain? Can we afford that? Is that smart for the country? And if it was a confederacy, Virginia would just be like, yeah, we can go to war. We have our own army. We have our own people. I mean, it's going to be a tough war, but let's do it. And then Virginia would lose, and then the Confederacy would be weaker because now we lost Virginia. I think that's, I don't know. I'm not as smart as any of those people who wrote those things, so I probably explaining it totally wrong. Hamilton would be embarrassed of how I'm explaining his plan. It's mostly John Jay, though. Hamilton didn't really make any arguments yet. I'm interested to see how Hamilton argues it. What did he say? Yeah, no, he really just talked about how, like, this is my opinion and deal with it. So, see you tomorrow. Bye.